in Apollo 13.
Did you know what it meant to put a helicopter up that high?
Not a clue. Not even a clue.
To the inspiring story of how one man left to die somehow saved himself.
I could, sit there and see my family in front of me, and I wasn't going to give up.
Turning Point. Tonight, Mountain Without Mercy, the Everest story.
Good evening, I'm Forrest Sawyer. Mount Everest used to be beyond the reach of everyone but the most experienced climbers. But in the mid-'80s, Everest became a status symbol. Wealthy climbers who could never have made it on their own began paying veteran guides to lead them to the top. And once money came to the mountain, tragedy was waiting to happen. Last May it did, when a hurricane-force storm caught climbers by surprise and killed 8 of them. What went wrong? For the past 4 months, Turning Point has been talking to the climbers who were there, and we've gathered never-before-seen pictures and video. We begin our story in the tiny country of Nepal, home to the tallest mountain in the world.
It is this fever. Good sense be damned. Everest. Everest, Whoa, maybe I can do it,
It was their life's dream to stand just for a moment on the very top of the world.
Anything can happen on a mountain, especially the world's highest mountain. And we forgot that on a moment's notice, you can be in a desperate fight for your life.
There's no room for error. Every minute you're up there, you're moving closer towards death.
I was buried partially in snow. He pulled my body out, chipped ice off my face.
But right now, I'm, got a lot of dark moments here. And
You are not the only one I would say this to, but you do seem haunted.
2 months ago, today, that nightmarish day happened. And there hasn't been more than an hour or two on any one of those days when this Everest thing I haven't just thought about it, it's been all I've thought about.
The adventure began here, Kathmandu, Nepal, a mecca for Westerners seeking the spiritual and the exotic. They came with ambition and enough money, as much as $65,000 each, to buy professional guides, some native Sherpas to carry their gear, and a chance to conquer Everest. Now they begin a long trek up and into the Himalayas.
Yeah, it's to be hanging out in the most beautiful mountains in the world it's a dream come true.
Scott Fisher from Seattle, one of the world's best-known professional guides. This year, Fisher decided he was ready to lead his first commercial expedition to Everest.
Honestly speaking, we have really learned how to climb Mount Everest and are building the yellow brick road to the top of Mount Everest.
Fisher was known for his freewheeling style, a kind of mountain climbing rock and roll summed up by his company's name, Mountain Madness.
Scott! Thank you.
Fisher's team of 3 guides and 8 paying clients set out on the 1st of April, keeping a video record of their 10-day trek to Everest's base camp. It is a relaxed time, when the climber's only job is to adjust to the altitude and to each other.
For a little hike today, acclimatization.
Charlotte Fox, a ski patroller from Aspen, Colorado, one of Fisher's clients.
Everybody is full of anticipation and excitement. You're getting deeper and deeper into the high mountains. And the whole way in, that thing looks big and bigger, and you just can't believe that you're really going to climb this mountain.
Mia, you are so cute.
Don't be fooled by the high spirits. Scott Fisher knows all too well how risky this climb can be. Everest has already claimed 133 climbers' lives. Most died on the way down.
The mountain's always going to win. Most of the deaths are happening when people push themselves to the summit. They don't quite get back down. You're not going to get asked to go on another climb ever again if you're dead. So it doesn't count if you touch the top and can't make it back down.
No one knows that better than Fisher's friend and rival on the mountain, Rob Hall of New Zealand. Hall is a legendary guide who has already taken 39 paying clients to the top of the world, and he's leading a team again this year.
He's our fearless leader, Rob Hall. Notice the gloves on our fearless leader. Can't, yes, that's right.
These hands must guide to the summit. He's one of those guys, you walk up to him and you like him the instant you meet him.
50-year-old Dallas physician Beck Weathers spent years preparing for his chance at Everest. He decided Rob Hall was the man to get him there.
You know pretty much right off the bat that this guy really knows what he's doing, and he makes it clear right from the start that his primary goal really is not to get you on top of the mountain, it's to get you back alive.
Back in Dallas, Beck's wife, Peach, was often left alone with their 2 children, while her husband pursued his dreams.
It was something he had to do, and I recognized his obsession.
Did you understand this obsession?
No.
It was just something that was completely outside
I knew
your
he
camp.
had to do it, but it was totally outside my personality.
Did you feel a little resentful?
Yes, absolutely. He knew I didn't want him to go.
No, when you get involved with a man who has those kinds of dreams, you have to take them as a package, and if you want to change them, then you shouldn't marry them.
Rob Hall's wife, Dr. Jan Arnold, understood her husband's obsession. As an experienced climber herself, she also understood the risks.
So you accept the risk, prepare as you can, and then you sort of forget about it for most of the time.
Until you can't forget about it.
Are you freezing now or you're okay now? You're freezing?
In 1993, Rob Hall's climbing partner, Gary Ball, came down with altitude sickness and was flown to safety in Hall's arms. The next year, it happened again, but there was no rescue, and Hall had to bury his friend.
We took our favorite climbing rope, we lowered him into the crevasse. Climbing rope is designed to sort of attach you together, and you never let go of it. And I had to let it just sort of slip through my hands.
Perhaps because of those experiences, Rob Hall's style was cautious, by the book. Last year he angered some clients when, for safety reasons, he turned them around short of the summit.
If you're not pushy, you don't have any chance of getting up a big mountain. If you're too pushy, you don't get to come home.
Say hello to the camera, John.
Good morning.
Among Rob Hall's 8 clients this year,
Yeah, I've had it all
journalist
along.
John Krakauer.
Not much.
He had come to report for Outside Magazine on the growing and controversial popularity of commercial expeditions.
There were a lot of people at base camp who were deluded, who were legends in their own mind, who thought that if only I didn't have to be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor and had time to climb full time, you know, I can do this stuff. And I was guilty of that too.
Krakauer was not the only one who had come to file reports on this year's climb. In Scott Fisher's team, well-known New York socialite Sandy Pittman, who had set a goal of climbing the highest peaks on all 7 continents. Everest was to be the last.
Sandy is a very wealthy individual, so when she comes to climb a mountain, she doesn't do it exactly the same way that everybody else does. I know that when we climbed in Antarctica, she brought a bag of gourmet food that would have taken 3 people to lift, and brought a TV with her. And there are not many places you go to climb a mountain and somebody's got, you know, a TV with movies you can watch in your tent.
Hi, Sandy. Sandy's communication tent.
This time, Pittman came packing sophisticated satellite equipment provided by NBC. Her reports were filed over the internet as the teams went up the mountain. For the first time, climbing Everest had become a worldwide spectator sport, and Rob Hall and Scott Fisher had the most to gain.
There's a marketing bonanza here if things turn out right. And not necessarily a disaster if they don't, but it's missed a big opportunity. So I think there's more pressure than ever for Rob to get me to the summit and for Scott to get Sandy to the summit.
Everybody's climbed it now. Every Tom, Dick, and Harry from every walk of life who has enough money
Professional climber David Brashears was also headed for Everest, leading a camera team from McGillivray Freeman Films to create the first giant screen movie on Everest. Brashears was worried. All the amateurs on the mountain could make it dangerous for everyone.
You get a guide, you get some money, you climb McKinley, next step is Everest. They don't know any better.
And there were a lot of amateurs to worry about. By early May, Everest's base camp, set among rock and ice 17,600 feet up, was growing into a small village. Over 300 people, 14 expedition teams, each with kitchens and stereos and satellite phones and fax machines.
We are making history and we are setting protocol, so let's take care of our mountain.
On May 4th, hoping to avoid a traffic jam up the mountain, expedition leaders met to coordinate their summit attempts. There is only a brief 2-week window in May when the ferocious weather is calm enough to give climbers a chance to make it to the top. David Brashears was there, and Scott Fisher, and Rob Hall, already working to make sure discipline would be maintained.
Maybe I'll get unpopular, but somebody has to be unpopular sometimes.
For 4 weeks, the teams had trained, climbing up and down the mountain, back and forth between base camp and 3 camps farther up, Camp 2, Camp 3, and Camp 4, all the time adjusting to the higher altitude and thinner air. Starving for oxygen, your brain and body functions can begin to slowly shut down. And the danger starts just 400 yards from base camp, where 19 climbers have died over the years, the Khumbu Icefall.
It's 2,000 feet of blocks of ice the size of huge buildings, separated by crevasses that just go forever. And the whole thing can move up to 30, 40 inches a day, so it's highly unstable. And you always have this concern that as you're standing there, some piece of it's going to come rolling through there and take you out.
Despite their friendly rivalry, Hall and Fisher decided their teams would be safer summiting together. Setting out on May 6th, it took 3 days of climbing to reach a tiny area carved out of a steep slope at nearly 24,000 feet. Camp 3. Then on May 9th, the first omen, a climber from a Taiwanese expedition had taken a bad fall, and his team leader, eager to reach the summit, left him at Camp 3.
That event told me that there was a lot of raw ambition up there and not enough compassion. 4 hours later, they called, he was dead. I had to go up and bring down a dead Taiwanese climber. I had to close his eyes and cover his face and lower him down, and I didn't like doing that. And that was the beginning for us of this whole tragedy.
Up above Brashears, the teams of Scott Fisher and Rob Hall press on to the last base, Camp 4, a desolate wind-blown patch of rock littered with hundreds of oxygen bottles from past expeditions. Most climbers must now wear oxygen masks to maintain warmth and strength, and the summit is still a day's climb away. Without extra oxygen, no one can survive here for long.
They are now in what climbers call the death zone. Here, 26,000 feet above sea level, the human brain literally begins to suffocate. Judgment is impaired, just at a time when there is no room for mistakes. And as you're about to see, climbers do make mistakes.
Turning Point, Mountain Without Mercy, the Everest story, continues.
The expedition on Everest is now nearly 5 miles above sea level. That's where commercial jets fly with pressurized cabins. At that altitude, you're breathing 4 times faster than normal. Every breath is painful, and you're still starving for oxygen. In fact, your body is under such stress that you are no longer hungry or thirsty. You are literally dying minute by minute, and the summit is still a day's climb away.
Midnight, May 10th. The 2 teams led by Scott Fisher and Rob Hall strap on oxygen masks and headlamps and set out for the summit.
It's cold, it's crisp, the sky is just a blanket of stars, and it really seems like an ideal night.
Dr. Beck Weathers knows they all have to move quickly. Rob Hall had told all his clients, if you stay up here too long, you will die. Reporter John Krakauer remembers the warnings.
He said, I'm going to call the shots on Summit Day. If I say we turn around, we're going to turn around. Some of you are going to argue with me. You're not going to like it. But believe me, I know what's right.
Hall and Fisher wanted their clients at the summit no later than 2 o'clock that afternoon. So they planned to send a Sherpa from each team out early to attach ropes into the rock and ice to help the clients move quickly past the most difficult points.
Rob Hall emphasized, this is the most important thing we do. This has to be done. The year before, ropes weren't fixed ahead of time. It slowed us down. We didn't get to the summit because of it. I'm not going to have that happen again this year.
There was no question.
No question.
The day's mistakes began here. Scott Fisher's Sherpa, a powerful climber named Lobsong, never showed up to attach the ropes, and the second Sherpa refused to work alone. Confused and desperate to keep moving, Fisher's assistant guide, Neil Beitelman, took over the job himself.
How much time do you estimate was lost altogether?
You know, at the outside, maybe a couple hours was lost because of this.
I mean, the difference between life and death came down to minutes. The ropes weren't fixed. There had to be an explanation.
In fact, there was. Instead of fixing ropes, Fisher's Sherpa, Lobsong, had quietly taken on a different mission.
The first time I saw Lobsang, he's got someone in tow on a 4-foot stretch of rope in a yellow down suit, hauling him like a horse pulling a plow. Lobsang is huffing and puffing, exhausted. The person he's hauling is clearly sort of miserable.
That person was Scott Fisher's high-profile client, the woman who was filing reports on the internet, Sandy Pittman.
For the first 5 or 6 hours of this climb, Sandy was being towed up the mountain. Someone decided she needed to be short-roped to help her get to the top.
Lobsong now says he towed Sandy Pittman because he knew it was what Scott Fisher wanted. Sandy Pittman has refused to talk to Turning Point.
In Scott Fisher's mind, how important was it for Sandy Pittman to make it to the top?
Scott was a savvy businessman. It was hugely important. You can't buy that kind of advertising. Sandy is a public figure. You know, she's not a shrinking violet. If she gets to the top, people are going to hear about this.
As each rope is fixed, there are delays. Climbers are waiting. And as these pictures show, now there is a traffic jam at the top of the world.
About halfway up this thing, I realized my vision is going south in a big way.
Far below the traffic jam at the ropes, Beck Weathers finds himself facing a very different problem. He had recently had eye surgery, and the high-altitude pressure is beginning to blind him.
And at this point, I said, this is crazy. One eye is completely blurred over, so I lost all my depth perception, and the other eye is not seeing that great. So I tell Rob Hall.
And Rob says, what? You're not going to go down by yourself? You're going to wait here because I need to know where you are. Beck says, fair enough. Cross my heart, hope to die. That's what he literally said. I'll wait here until you come back.
Rob Hall goes on up the mountain, leading 3 other clients, including Doug Hansen, a postal worker from Seattle who was a member of Hall's expedition last year, the expedition that failed to reach the summit.
That really broke Rob's heart as well as Doug's. And he said, Doug, come back next year. I guarantee I'll get you to the top. You can do it. I know you can do it.
By 1:25 that afternoon, Neil Beitelman reached the summit, uncertain what he should do. It was Beitelman's boss, Scott Fisher, who was supposed to tell his clients when to head back down. And Fisher was somewhere down the mountain. With precious minutes going by, Beitelman decided to wait.
How long were you there?
I was at the summit for 1 hour and 45 minutes.
That's a long time.
I thought so, yeah.
It is the day's second mistake, and the clients keep coming well into the afternoon and stay to savor their success, forgetting the warnings to turn back by 2 p.m. Charlotte Fox is one of 6 members of Scott Fisher's team to make it to the top.
I didn't even really want to stay up as long as we did, but there was somewhat of a celebration going on, and you hated to blow out the party too early.
Finally, at 3:10, long after the scheduled turnaround time, Beitelman decides on his own to start the clients down, soon passing Scott Fisher, who is weak, but still pressing for the summit.
He wasn't his chipper, strong self at that point, but, you know, who is up there?
Rob Hall, the other team leader, waits on top, well past his deadline, for his last client to arrive, postal worker Doug Hansen. These final delays by the team leaders are the last critical mistakes. As Scott Fisher descends from the summit, his last roll of film shows ominous clouds gathering just below the climbers.
I'm very scared and taking it seriously and want to get down in a hurry. And pretty soon, I descend into the storm.
And in the space of several minutes, the wind just comes in like a freight train. I mean, it is really blowing. It's very, very cold. And it turns into a whiteout.
You can't really tell where the ridge ends and the cloud begins. It'd be very easy to just walk off this ridge, fall thousands of feet, come down. What the hell are you doing here, Beck?
True to his promise, Beck had stayed right where Rob Hall had left him, unaware that Hall was still at the summit with client Doug Hansen, who had now collapsed from exhaustion.
Very soon after that, we have the first radio call from just below the summit, Rob asking for help, saying, Doug and I have run out of oxygen. Doug's in trouble. We need help.
To make it worse, Scott Fisher, who has been fatigued and climbing slowly all day, is also near collapse. At base camp, a cameraman captures the growing concern.
What's the problem tonight? Some people's going summit and coming down with problems. Late.
Rob Hall, you copy me, over.
All they can do is wait and watch as the storm continues to gather farther up the mountain.
We're 5,000 feet away. 5,000 feet away on Everest at those elevations. You might as well be trying to rescue the people in Apollo 13.
Near the summit, Doug Hansen is too tired to move, and Rob Hall refuses to abandon him.
You know, Rob is the consummate guide. I can't imagine him leaving a client, even if it's obvious that it's going to be suicidal to say. That's the kind of, it's just something that you don't see that much these days, but that's Rob.
Not far away, Scott Fisher's old friend and climbing partner Lobsong tries to rescue him. Just as Lobsong had towed Sandy Pittman up the mountain, now he tries to drag Fisher back down.
When I tied him with the rope and started dragging him, I thought, if I die now, I'll die for my friend. But the weather was so bad, and he couldn't move at all.
Descending into the storm, Neil Beidelman works feverishly to keep the exhausted clients moving, even dragging a 47-year-old Japanese woman named Yasuko Namba.
I got in front of her and I grabbed her harness and I clipped myself into the rope and I started running down, getting her sliding.
Until finally, by nightfall, he has pulled together a group of 7, including Beck Weathers, Charlotte Fox and her boyfriend Tim Madsen, and Sandy Pittman. All of them out of bottled oxygen, out of energy, and in the middle of a freezing hurricane, completely lost.
Sandy basically became hysterical. And I can understand that, say, I don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. My face is freezing, my hands are freezing.
As the wind chill drops to 70 below, they pound each other on the back and yell to stay warm.
And Tim would try to get Charlotte to keep moving.
I wasn't so sure I could make it through a whole night of that. And I thought, well, maybe this is it, old girl. You've had a good life, no regrets. That's all you can ask for.
Wrong answer, that doesn't hold. And whether she wanted to or not, she was going to survive.
Then at midnight, 24 hours after they had first set out, one small piece of luck. For just a moment, the cloud cover breaks.
As we looked up, I remember seeing almost directly above me and behind me a bit the Big Dipper. And I was like, yes, there's stars, look.
At last, Beidelman had his bearings. But most of the others were too weak to walk now, and he had to leave them. Tim Madsen stayed behind to help, though there wasn't much he could do.
Beck begins to stand up like this, and then the wind just blows him over backwards. And he rolled out of sight, and that was pretty much the last I had seen of him.
And I can feel myself getting really numb and that your thoughts are real hard to stay focused anymore, and you're not moving as much, and then you just sort of slide off into oblivion.
They are dying. Their only hope, Neil Beidelman.
I remember stumbling along, and through this ground blizzard I saw this dim, foggy light, and as we got closer I remember Anatoly yelling my name, Neil, and I was just like, yes, you know, this is it.
Beidelman has found Camp 4, and Anatoly Bokriev, Scott Fisher's Russian guide, one of the strongest climbers in the world.
Anatoly went out alone into the storm 3 times and brought back people who would almost certainly have died without his effort.
3 times he basically risked his life.
Not basically, most definitely.
I need to help for people who have signs of life.
Anatoly Bokriev had saved 3 climbers' lives, including Charlotte Fox and Sandy Pittman. But Dr. Beck Weathers and Japanese climber Yasuko Namba are unconscious and beyond his help. They are left to die.
And I remember just, you know, literally weeping for, I don't know how long, half an hour maybe. It was very, very intense.
You felt guilty?
Oh, sure, for being alive, you know.
Daylight, May 11th. Rob Hall and his client Doug Hansen are somewhere near the south summit. Scott Fisher lies some 1,800 vertical feet below. Beck Weathers and Yasuko Namba are only 300 yards from the tents at Camp 4.
Camp 4 is chaos. The wind's blowing so loud you can't talk from one tent to the other. No one really has a plan. And then it was, from then on, the nightmare just intensified.
Exhausted survivors venture out to check the bodies of Weathers and Namba. They do find them. Incredibly, they are alive, but unconscious and barely breathing. No climber has the strength to drag them to the tents. And so, for the second time, a difficult decision is made.
Leave them there, put them out, you know, it's the best thing for everybody. They'll die within minutes, maybe hours at most. They're not feeling any pain.
Hours later, rescuers from down the mountain finally reach the survivors at Camp 4.
We saw about 20 tents in a very small area, and no one was out moving around. So our basic goal really at that point was to cut open the bag and start passing out oxygen.
What the rescuers could not know is that only 300 yards from the tents, one man is still stubbornly refusing to die.
The point that I woke up, my motivations were pretty clear. I mean, I could, you know, sit there and see my family in front of me. And I wasn't going to give up.
Somehow, frozen to the bone, without oxygen, still partially blind, Beck Weathers pictures his family in his mind, throws off his pack, and drags himself up from the snow. At the tents, Todd Burleson looks out and sees something.
He was just a ghost standing there. His arm was frozen up parallel to his shoulder, about like this. His arm was bare to here. His shirt was completely open down to here. And he was unrecognizable. His face was so badly frozen.
All I knew was that as long as my legs would run and I could stand up, I was going to move toward that camp, and if I fell down, I was going to get up. And if I fell down again, I was going to get up. And I was going to keep moving until I either hit that camp, I couldn't get up at all, or I walked off the face of that mountain.
What Beck Weathers does not know, what none of the climbers can know, is that there is worse to come. Day of the storm, the winds are still howling, the temperatures far below zero. Yet somewhere near the south summit, team leader Rob Hall is alive and talking on his radio to his old climbing partner, Ed Beasters.
We're glad to hear your voice. You're sounding great. Keep moving, buddy. Is your oxygen flowing now?
Yeah, I've got oxygen off.
Good. Crank it up for the uphill parts and start moving it out. Let's go.
And I was speaking to Rob throughout the morning, trying to coerce him or motivate him or stimulate him or somehow get him moving.
Doug Hansen, the client Rob stayed behind to save, is now dead. And on the radio, Viesters is desperate to get Rob to save himself while he can.
Only take what you need, Rob. Only take what you need and start moving. Okay. Just crawl and pull your way up the rope.
I was choked up half the time, knowing that he was just sitting there, and at some points we were trying to be angry with him, to say, Rob, get your butt up and move.
Halfway around the world, in New Zealand, Rob's wife, Jan Arnold, 7 months pregnant, gets a phone call from Mount Everest. The base camp satellite phone is patched through to Rob's radio, and she hears his voice.
He was frostbitten, he was weak, he was very tired, but that he was going to try and use the oxygen in the place where he'd spent the night, and he was going to try to come down.
He kept saying to us on the radio, okay, I'm leaving now. I'll be leaving in 5 minutes. And we'd go outside. I remember looking up at the South Summit. It was clear in the morning. The wind was blowing, but it was clear. And we could see this black speck. Everyone was really rooting for him. But if anyone can do it, it's Rob. He's tough. He's experienced.
And for 3 hours, we thought he was actually moving, on the move. And 3 hours later, he says, you know, I haven't even started yet.
As the storm continues to rage, 40-year-old team leader Scott Fisher is still missing. A rescue team climbs out into life-threatening conditions to find him. Hours later, they report back. Scott is dead.
They watched his chest for any motion at all. Tried to give him hot tea, hot soup. He said he hadn't closed his eyes and his teeth were clenched.
Exhaustion, high altitude, and intense cold have overcome the powerful Scott Fisher. Now, the last hopes are focused on team leader Rob Hall, who is even further away. Hall is barely alive and too frozen to move. A second rescue party fails to reach him in the storm, and the terrible news is radioed down the mountain.
David yelled up to me, and he said, the Sherpas have turned around, and they can't get to Rob.
And that's it?
Yeah. I mean, if I had a radio, I wouldn't have known what to say. You know, what do you say, goodbye?
It is 6:40 in the evening. Rob Hall's radio is patched through again to his home in New Zealand, and his wife, Jan Arnold. It is a call heard on radios across all the camps on Mount Everest.
He's trying to put a good face on it. It's, you know, how are you, and are you comfortable? And he's saying, oh, the word he used was in the context of the situation. I mean, this guy's freezing to death, and he's trying to not worry his wife. And she ends by saying, you know, I'm really sending all my positive energy your way. Don't worry, my love. I'll take care of it when you get back. And Rob, you know, he's still, oh, I'm sending all my positive energy your way. You know, sleep well. I hope you're comfortable. And
what was it like listening to that conversation?
It was heartbreaking. I mean,
He told me on the final radio phone call, that not to worry about him too much.
With all hope now gone, husband and wife talk about their unborn child.
We sort of picked a name as well. I really take comfort in that I have his child, and that I know that he would have, as he drifted off to hypothermic sleep, unconsciousness, that he would have known all of that. It's a great, you know, it's a great comfort to me.
Dawn on the third day. Rob Hall's radio has been silent through the night. It is ironic, with both expedition leaders dead on the mountain. It is a 50-year-old amateur climber, Beck Weathers, who had saved himself. Yet Weathers is in critical condition.
And I see John Krakauer stick his head in the tent, and he had a rather amazed look on his face. I don't remember exactly what he said to me, but it was not complimentary as to how good I looked at the moment.
his nose is black, his cheeks are black, his hand is color of porcelain. I've never been around anything close to death, and here's a guy that's been given up for dead twice, and I have no question that he's going to die. We're not going to get him down.
At 26,000 feet, with oxygen so thin, one man cannot physically carry another.
To survive, Weathers must stand up and walk, no matter how badly injured. These photographs document Weathers' descent, his hands frozen and unfeeling. A team of rescuers, now joined by David Brashears and Ed Feasters, guide him, slipping, sliding, inch by inch, down the mountain, out of the death zone.
I'm not worried at this point. As I look, you may talk about the dream team in basketball, but so I'll match these guys against anybody in the world on mountain climbing.
And he said, I'm going to lose my hands, but I got my family, and I'm thankful to be alive. And he kept saying it. And he said to me, David, you keep talking to me because it takes my mind off my problems.
But Beck Weathers is still far from safety. In a medical tent at Camp 2, he joins the Taiwanese team leader, Makalu Gao. Both men are in desperate need of medical attention. A helicopter rescue seems out of the question because at that altitude, choppers can lose lift and fall from the sky. But back in Dallas, Peach Weathers is on the phone, frantically trying to look for a helicopter anyway.
What can we do to help? Surely we can do something to help get Beck off that mountain.
Did you know what it meant to put a helicopter up that high?
Not a clue. Not even a clue.
They make a statement while we're in the tent that somebody's going to attempt a helicopter rescue, which is a, big ha-ha, because nobody has ever put a helicopter up above the icefall. And the likelihood of that occurring is essentially zero.
This is the man who would attempt the impossible, Nepalese Army pilot Colonel Madan KC. Within hours of receiving the call, Colonel KC takes off from Kathmandu, flying first to base camp and then higher up the mountain, higher than any small helicopter has ever flown before. Below him, climbers scramble to prepare a landing zone, using Kool-Aid to mark an X in the snow.
He came in and circled, and we thought he was going to give up. And he came around again. I guided him in. He put that helicopter right down on that X, gave me the thumbs up.
I give the thumbs up, okay signal to them, and the one of the climbers, he came close to the helicopters, and he opened the door, and I asked just one person at a time.
The helicopter has been brought in to rescue Beck Weathers, but Makalu Gao, the climber from Taiwan, is in worse condition. Only one can go, and Beck gives up his ride.
It seemed like the thing to do at the time. When that helicopter took off with Makalu in it, though, I must tell you, my spirits were down around my feet because I didn't think he was coming back.
A freelance cameraman captures the helicopter as it flew overhead.
I came down to the base camp, I dropped him there, and I went up again to the Camp 1, where I was landed before, when they saw me again, and they were more excited.
No one more than Beck Weathers. Within minutes, he is lifted aboard.
He just leans the thing forward, and you just drop, plummet down as you're dropping to gain some air underneath those blades so you can get some lift. Colonel Madan KC, that's a guy with a big heart. And, so I am extraordinarily grateful to him and for his courage.
8 climbers died in the storm on Everest. Their bodies remain where they fell. 3 Indian military climbers on the other side of the mountain. Andy Harris, a guide from New Zealand. Japanese climber Yasko Namba. Doug Hansen, the postal worker from Seattle, who finally summited on this, his 3rd attempt. Scott Fisher, the team leader, elite climber, and father of 2. Rob Hall, the most respected and experienced guide on Everest, and father-to-be. Many more were left shaken, some were grievously injured. And across the mountain, climbers shared a sense of loss and disbelief. 48 hours later, a quiet memorial service is held at base camp. Friends pay tribute to the dead and begin to question how things could have gone so terribly wrong.
All of us who were there should be looking into our souls pretty damn deep people pay with their lives, so you better expect that you're going to pay a little anguish for a while.
I was frightened by the deaths of Rob and Scott, and I felt very mortal, and I felt very humble, and I felt very tired.
But for David Brashears and his film team, the expedition is not yet over.
The British explorer George Mallory was once asked why he wanted to climb Mount Everest. Because it's there, he answered. A year later, he would disappear forever on the mountain. During 36 hours in May, 8 climbers had died. But even that would not stop those determined to go to the top of the world. On May 20th, 1 week after the climbing tragedy, the MacGillivray-Freeman film team headed back up through the Khumbu icefall. Their mission was to carry a giant screen camera to the top of the world. Their film, Everest, will come out in 1998, directed by David Brashears. These are the images they shot along the way.
We had a sense of a mission. We'd worked so hard. I think the group thought it would be senseless to turn around and go home.
It was a tough climb, made tougher by a sight they were all dreading: the frozen bodies of their 2 friends. First, they passed Scott Fisher, lashed to a ledge on his cherished mountain. Then, soon after, Rob Hall.
I had really wanted to bring down his ice axe. His wife is pregnant. Maybe they'll be a mountaineer and maybe they would like Daddy's ice axe. And in the end, I realized I didn't want to disturb the scene.
The film team had endured one of the worst seasons of tragedy the mountain had ever seen. And finally, at noon on May 23rd, they reached the summit. Back in Dallas, Beck Weathers arrived home to his wife and 2 children. His frostbitten right hand and the fingers on his left were amputated. Beck is unsure if he'll be able to resume his medical career, but it's certain, he says, his climbing days are over.
It's easy to over-pursue goals. It's easy to become obsessed with goals. Because of those obsessions, I took away a lot of good years from my family. I'd like to give those back.
In New Zealand on July 27th, Rob Hall's wife, Jan Arnold, delivered their 9-pound, 3-ounce daughter. As they had agreed in their final conversation, she was named Sarah Hall.
Without her, I just not quite sure what I would be doing right now. She's a dear little girl and she looks strikingly like him.
For Jan Arnold, there is comfort in this, and in her memories of a husband who died pursuing his passions.
I don't think I felt that he was indestructible. I knew there was a chance of him dying on any of these big mountains. I didn't know him long enough, 6 years, but I have to think they were the richest 6 years of my life.